Good morning, Shay. How you doing this morning? Good morning, sis. Alicia, good morning. Good morning. How y'all feeling? How you guys feeling this morning? Alicia, how are you feeling? Another week. Another week. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Devette. Good morning. Good morning. So, good to see y'all this morning. I had a couple of technical difficulties this morning, but so we only have about 15 minutes. But I definitely want to get into this because a lot of change has been happening, right? 35 weeks. Yes. Oh, yeah, nice. Good morning, Shantae. Good morning. And so I want to hope you guys are doing well this morning. I want to talk about change. I know. Good morning, Jean Jean. I know these last couple of weeks have been really dealing with really preparation for change, right? We talked about mentorship. We talked about the how crucial it is that that we begin to have those checks and balances. Talked about power, right? Absolute power. Good morning, Ginger. How you guys doing? And so, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So accountability is what we really covered last week, and being accountable, and how being accountable is such a major piece to our really success. We must be accountable. And so today I want to really talk about change. And as you guys, I missed you guys last couple of days, well, last week, because I was out of town. I went out of town, went to Chicago for a conference, and the conference was it really adding on to the accountability piece. It's really funny how that worked out, because a lot of the speakers, the people who were speaking in the conference, they were talking about just the accountability. They were talking about that. Good morning. Good morning, sis. How you doing, Steph? And so I want to talk about change, and so being ready for change, and how to that we must change is inevitable. We understand that change is inevitable, but we must have a need for change. There are two different types of change. I read this in an article this morning. It was really good. It says life happens, and when life happens, it's called change, right? It's called change. Some changes are the result of biology and the passage of time within the natural circle of order. Others are self-generated. Okay, so some changes that happen are just through biology, just through life, seasons, things like that. Those are changes that are externally, but then the other changes are self-generated, and that's the change I want to talk about. That's the change that I'm talking about today, that is ready. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for this self-generating change. It says under our own control and willful effort, or dependent upon encounters with significant others, family, friends, colleagues, or intimates. It says still other changes occur as a result of circumstance or fate, or the proverbial date with destiny. And so change, in order for us to be ready for change, I really want to give three keys, and it's called ACT, ACT, ACT. I want to give three keys, and I have to rush through it a little bit, but I don't want to rush past the content of what I want to share. And so, what are the best ways to change? What are the best ways to change? And these three keys, ACT, is what I came up with. I really wanted to see how it can really help, how it's helped me. It's what I'm walking into now. I'm walking into these three steps right now. I'm within these three steps, and it seems like the more change I'm making, the more I realize the more change I need to make. So it's like once you start changing and you start, doing things, opens your eyes up to other things that, man, this could be better as well. It's just like, I'm remodeling my basement, right? And so I started, y'all, I told about this about a month and a half ago when I started remodeling my bathroom. It started with the bathroom, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do the floor. And then I'm doing the floor, and I'm like, okay, I need to paint in here. And then I painted, like, okay, I need a new shower. Okay, now I need it. And literally, it's been a full gut. It's turned into a full gutting of the bathroom, because when you start making changes, everything else has to keep up, right? every other thing, every other area is affected. When you start making changes in one area, those other areas begin to look outdated. And so, you know what else they're going to start working on? They're going to start being stronger mentally. They're going to start eating right. It's going to start affecting all these different areas. And then that change in the gym and eating right is going to affect their relationship. If they're hanging out with people who, go out late, drink, do these different things that's going to gain weight, guess what? That change made is going to start affecting those relationships. And now the next thing you know, now changes happen simultaneously throughout every area of your life. That's the beauty of change. That's the power of change. Change will affect everything. It will affect everything in your life. And so let's go over the verb, the actual definition of change. And I kind of let the cat out the bag. Change is a verb. It is a verb, right? It is, and verbs are action words. So this is Webster. It says to make the form, nature, content, future course of something different from what it is, or from what it would be if left alone. So if there are areas in our lives that we know need change, if they're left alone, it'll never change. And I like that. Good morning, Mike. So it says again, to make the form, nature, content, future course, etc., or something different from what it is, or from what it would be if left alone. So if it's just left alone, there is no change. There can be no change if it's just left alone. And so it's something that will change the future course, make from what it is to what it can be, what it will be, or what it could be if just left alone. So if we just leave it alone, we give no room for change, right? So I like this. This next one says to transform or convert. The next one says to substitute. Now, this is the one I want to touch on. To substitute another or others for, exchange for something else. This is awesome. So we're talking about an exchange. We're talking about change requires an exchange. In order for change to occur, there has to be an exchange made. There has to be an exchange made. There has to be an exchange made. And so my 3 points are going to point this out. So my first point is ACT. I have 3 points. ACT, act. ACT. The first one is acknowledgement, but just even understanding the exchange thing, right? The exchange thing, acknowledgement, acknowledging what needs to be changed. I must acknowledge what needs to be changed in order for change to take place. I must realize what exchange needs to happen. When you go to the store, you purchase something and you give them some money. If you give them cash, paper cash, you bought something and they exchange what you gave them and they're going to give you what? Change. That's what they call it. Here's your change. Here's your change. You change something from one form to another through an exchange, right? Through an exchange. I've traveled the world over the last couple of years. I went to Korea, I had to get wine. I had to give them, US dollars and then USD. I had to give them USD in exchange for wine. And went to Kenya. I had to give them USD in exchange for shillings. You know what I'm saying? And then when I went to Turkey, I had to give them USD in exchange for lira. So in order to purchase things, in order to get what I needed, in order to get things that I wanted, I had to make an exchange. And so do you. So do we. In order for you to get what you want, there has to be an exchange made. An exchange must be made. So the first thing we must look into is acknowledging. I must acknowledge what needs to be changed. Now, this acknowledging piece, the A in ACT, ACT, it is a humbling. This is a position of humility. And I'm going to tell you, greatness requires humility. Success requires humility. If there's no humility, change has no room to come in. Humility is essential for change. It's essential for change. You know how people are, they're stuck in their ways. That's just a good way of saying they're arrogant, prideful, and they will never change. Okay, so and it may not be in a arrogant way that's trying to demean everybody. But even if Granny don't want to, stay on the landline, nobody answer they landline phones anymore. No, Granny, we got cell phones. Well, I refuse. I'm not buying into the time. I'm not changing, right? I'm not changing. Well, guess what? If you want what you want, you're going to have to make an exchange. So you must first acknowledge what needs to be swapped out. So that's my question to you. What needs to be swapped out? What needs to be swapped out? So I like this. And this is what I call acknowledging. Acknowledge the need. There can be no change without the acknowledgement of a need for it. If I don't acknowledge a need, change come within that door. And so I like this. This is called, now the article I read, I put my points, then I read up an article, I pulled up an article that says, greatness requires humility. I'm sorry, I said that, my fault. It says pre-contemplation. So they call this area of acknowledgement, they call it pre-contemplation. It says in this stage, we've either literally never thought about needing to change a particular behavior, or we've never thought about it seriously. So it says, often we receive ideas about things we might need to change from others, families, friends, doctors, but we may react negatively by reflex. And this is why I said we must have humility. Humility is essential for change, because if somebody gives me an acknowledgement of something that needs to change, even the doctor, if the doctor says, you know what, you're going to die if you continue to be 450 pounds. You're going to have to lose weight or you're going to die. You're going to have to change your eating. You're going to have to drink water. You're going to have to. Now, if I'm just reflexing, if I'm just operating in a reflexive position, a reflexive disposition, I'm going to reject that change. I'm going to reject it, even though it's for the better. It's for the betterment of me. It's for the betterment of my future, my destiny. And so this requires humility. Pre-contemplation requires humility because I can react negatively on reflex. Are you a reflexive person? Do you react? Is your reflex negative? Do you make negative reflexes when you're shown a need to change? This is something tough, because you know what I believe? I believe we all initially negatively respond. Even if it's not externally, we negatively respond even internally when something's being shown that we need to change. And so we must humble ourselves to realize the need. And so it says, after all, we're usually quite happy with our current stable of habits. If we weren't, we wouldn't have them in the first place. However, if we can find our way to react more openly to these messages, we might find some value in them. Remember, they aren't sent with the intent to harm. So when things show itself, when things show us the areas that need changing, it's not intended to harm us. That's one thing we must just first have as a consideration in our mind. This is not to harm me. I must have that mindset. If I want to be a person who changes and who's growing a lot, I have to always be able to say, this is not to harm me. Okay. Now this goes into we can't be set in our ways. We aren't made to feel good about living in error. We're not designed to feel good about error. Living in error, making wrong decisions. We're not even designed to do that. But what happens is, and this is also an abuse against your conscience, right? If I'm doing the wrong, if I'm making the wrong decisions time after time after time, I can get myself in an environment where I won't feel so bad about it, right? I won't feel so bad about it. I can put myself in an environment where I won't feel so bad about things that I know based on my moral foundation is wrong. But my conscience is being damaged. And I'm totally abusing my conscience. I talk about that a lot because, you know, we must live to have a pure conscience. We must live to be true to thine own self, be true. Because, you know, my conscience is my conscience. I don't put my conscience on other people, right? My conscience is mine. I want to make sure that I'm being clear in my conscience. And when I make decisions, which I do all the time, when I make this line up with my conscience, I can't just call somebody and be like, man, somebody who's, you know, who doesn't have the same moral foundation that builds their conscience. I can't go to them and be like, man, I just did this. Oh, man, I did a million times worse than you. That makes me feel better. It might make me feel better in the moment, but it's not going to make room for change, and it's not going to make room for growth. It's not going to make room for my destiny to be ruling my life. And so, so the second stage, ACT, the first is acknowledgement. The C is conversion prep. Conversion prep. Not conversion, but conversion prep. This conversion prep comes through exposure. And exposure is a two-sided coin. Exposure is a two-sided coin. Look at this word conversion. It says the act or process of converting. So we can't go through the process of converting without first conversion prep. Conversion prep is not just acknowledging the need for change. Conversion prep is exposure. I must be exposed. It's similar to the first key, but it's exposure. Exposure is twofold. The first exposure is I need to expose wrong things. I need to expose myself when I have wrong things going on, or I'm making wrong decisions, or even if it's not wrong decisions, even if they can just be better. They're not cutting edge. It's like somebody who still has dial-up. Dial-up isn't horrible. It was great then. But through the process of time, dial-up is not cutting edge anymore. There's a better way. And in life, there's always going to be times that it's better. There's a better way. There's a better way to do it. There's a better way to do it. Just like Moses was told by Jethro. He said, look, this is cool, but there's a better way. What you're doing is not good. It's not going to cause you to grow. You can be more efficient if you switch what you're doing, exchange it, right? Swap it out for this. Swap it out for this. And you know what happens? Exposure, it takes people close to us. This goes back to the accountability piece. We have to be accountable to somebody who can correct us, somebody who can constructively criticize us, somebody who can say, you know what? I think we can do better. I think there's something that you might, consider looking into that might be more efficient, right? And so, two-sided coin. You must be exposed, right? Exposure is the act of exposing. Watch this. Laying open or uncovering. This is Webster. The disclosure of something private or something secret. And I like this also. It says the fact or state of being exposed. And I want you to imagine a bruise, right? I got a lot of bruises playing football all my life. I have all these bruises and cuts. And so when you first get a bruise or cut, you cover it up, right? It's not exposed. It's not exposed because of the environment. So if the environment is dirty, a lot of germs, I need to keep it exposed. And that's when we get hurt in life, we have to keep covered so it doesn't get exposed. But if you never take that bandage off, you also see there's two sides to the coin of exposure. There's exposure that says, okay, I need to cover it up. I need to be covered so it won't get more damaged or it won't get more even disinfected. It won't get infected. But I also need to know there's a certain person or a certain environment where I need full exposure. I need full exposure. When I go to the doctor, I no longer need to keep it covered. I need that thing exposed because I need it cleaned out. I need it cleaned out. And sometimes we have Band-Aids in our life. We build these Band-Aids on our lives, and it's to the detriment of our destiny because we need that thing fully exposed. We need somebody, an expert, to look into that thing and say, okay, this needs to be cleaned out. If you keep this covered, you're actually trapping in the infection. And a lot of times when we operate in error and we never be exposed and we're not accountable, we're trapping the infection in. And then next thing you know, the infection is being protected just as good things are to be protected. We can't protect infection. We can't protect infection. I remember I was in oh man, I got 2 minutes. I was in a bad relationship. This was years and years ago. I was in a real bad relationship, and I couldn't stop making the mistakes in the relationship, okay? Based on my moral grounding, everybody got their own conscience, but in my conscience, I was making wrong decisions, abusing my conscience, and I kept abusing my conscience because of my foundation. I was going against the scriptures of what I try to frame my life on. I was going against it with this relationship, and I was isolated. I was totally isolated. It was that Band-Aid covering up all this stuff, and I was protecting the infection. My conscience was being abused, and there was no freedom for it. And then I told my friend, I told my boy, I told my partner, I said, man, I'm in this relationship, dude, and I can't stop messing up. I can't stop messing up. I just keep on messing up with this girl. I keep doing it. And as soon as I uncovered the bandage, as soon as exposure happened, this is conversion prep. As soon as I took the bandage off, he was like, man, you need to stop it. You need to just stop. You need to end this relationship. And I'm like, man, it didn't feel good, but my conscience knew he was right. And that prep was the conversion. That was the conversion prep that led me to be in preparation for my marriage, for my wife, my future wife. But we need to be exposed. The third thing is transition. Transition. And I have to rush through this. I'll have to finish this tomorrow. But transition is the movement and the passage, the change from one position to the next. Transition is the action part. It's the action part. It's the part where you acknowledge you've been exposed to the bad, and you expose the bad, and you've been exposed to the good. You've been exposed to the good. This is what you need to do. We need exposure. We need to be exposed to the possibilities, the positive possibilities, right? That's the act. To be exposed to the positive possibilities. Now I have exposure, two-sided coin. I've exposed the bad. Now I've been exposed to the good, and now I'm ready for action. Now I'm ready to put a plan in place in order to move forward to my destiny. And I'm sorry, y'all, I have to go, and I'll be on time tomorrow. So I hope you guys have an awesome day. It's ready for change. You're ready. You're ready for change. You're ready for change. Search every area, acknowledge it, humble yourself to see what needs to be exposed. Expose it to the right person, the right group of people, even if it's a group, even if it's a doctor or counselor. Expose that thing, then to be exposed to the positive parts, and then transition yourself. Make that transition. I hope you guys have an awesome day. God bless. All right, y'all, let's go.